Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a little dose of reality.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Real Talk Fins Talk. I'm your host, Steve Malloy, and joining me tonight, we have Q from I Hate Football podcast. So,
There it is.
first thing I got to do is first, after the housekeeping and everything, I've got to ask Will, how in the hell did he come up with that name? Or not Will, Q, how the hell did he come up with that name? So, anyway, everybody, please hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, please share. Once you subscribe, share with your friends, your families, and your neighbors, and that would be wonderful. And just to make mention, I don't do this a lot, but I really don't like doing it. But we do have what they call it. Now I had a brain fart, ladies and gentlemen. Oh God, what is it? The
What is
money
it, man?
thing. I forgot what
If
they call it.
you want to contribute, or you want
If you
to?
want to contribute, I forgot what they specifically call it. It didn't come to me. I just had a brain fart. But
I got
anyway, just make sure you hit that like button so it sends out all the notifications to all the other Dolphins that are that have subscribed to the show. So, Will, I got to ask you, brother. Number one, how did you come up with the name of that show of yours? And tell us a little bit of your background. Are you a Dolphin fan of? How long? And what times they can catch you on your show?
For sure, man. First of all, man, appreciate you having me, man. It's we've done this now a
Absolutely.
couple times, and definitely
Yep.
definitely enjoying getting with you guys on the FTSN, man. You and Bobby and everyone, man, been super welcoming, man. So definitely appreciate the hospitality, and love joining you guys, man, to chop it up a little bit. But so first and foremost, the name of my show is the I Hate Football podcast. And I think me, just like a lot of other people, Saturdays and Sundays come around. I'm a football junkie. Love sports, but football, is definitely my number one vice of all those. And in the NFL, I'm actually a 49ers fan. I was born and raised in Miami, but I'm actually a 49ers fan. And
What the
yeah,
heck?
yeah, and I get that a lot. And in college, I'm a University of Miami fan. And so with the frustration that comes with both of those teams, all right, the Niners haven't won a title since '94. Canes haven't won a title since 2001. They tend to be frustrating weekends. As much as I love it, I think I hate it kind of, at the same time. And so I find myself, saying, God, I hate football. And so no matter who I'm with, whether it's my daughter or friends, whoever it is, they're like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, God, it's frustrating, it's maddening, but it's fun. I love it. And that's kind of how I came up with the name, man, just because it's a constant source of frustration. And but I love it. So it's just it's a love hate relationship. But yeah, man, that's kind of how I came up with the name. But yeah, born and raised in Miami. I've been in the Atlanta area since 2004. Yeah, my teams. I'm a huge Canes fan, huge Niners fan. I'm a Miami Heat fan. I'm a Marlins fan, even though they're a disaster. But I'm kind of across the Heat. I'm again a big Heat fan. So kind of across the board, a Miami sports fan. And the Niners are kind of the exception. Yeah, that's those are my teams. I've kind of started again on the Brave side of things. That they won a title here, fairly recently in 21, and they're usually pretty good team. And the Marlins have made it really easy to not really follow them too terribly closely. So Marlins still my favorite team. Kind of root for the Braves. Got a chance to go to a lot of their games, and so I enjoy that. And the Hawks I kind of follow, in basketball. But yeah, that's kind of the backstory right there.
Okay. And so the I Hate Football podcast, what times are you on and days?
So the times and dates, it kind of vary a little bit just based on schedule, just work wise and everything. They kind of vary, but typically, I'm trying to put something out weekly. Um, you know, uh, Sometimes on my own, sometimes with my buddy Will from the 305 Sports Now podcast. So shout out to him. We get together a pretty good bit. But
Yep.
typically somewhere in that Wednesday or Thursday. Usually they post sometime in the morning. So I usually post about 8 or 9 in the morning. If I record the night before, they'll end up posting the morning after. So usually sometime about the end of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, about 8 in the morning. If you find me on YouTube on the under I Hate Football podcast, that's usually where everything will come out. You can also find me at Hate Football Pod on Twitter or X, and I Hate Football Podcast on Instagram also.
All right, great. Thanks for that information. And
Mm.
you and Will had a show from 305 Sports Now, had a show last week, I believe. A really good podcast on the AFC East. And we're going to go into that a little bit tonight, too, with you, because you're very knowledgeable about the football all around, just, all the teams and everything. You're very knowledgeable. You know about the Dolphins, of course, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to get into the secret sauce for how the Miami Dolphins can be successful this season, what the secret sauce is, and then we'll talk a little bit about the AFC East. But the first thing that I wanted to ask you, I want to thank everybody that's joining in the chat right now. Frozen Finn fan, he's my next up here on the Fins Talk Sports Network podcast. He's got a great podcast. Go check him out. Subscribe. We got Cap for Life, the Cap Report. And we got Will in here, 305 Sports Now. There he is. And we got Finn Sammy's in here as well. He's got a Fins TV podcast. I checked that out the other night. His cast, very good, very knowledgeable, very interesting to listen to them as well. Go check them out, subscribe, and of course go check out Hate Football Podcast. Go over there right now. Watch that last episode with Will of 305 Sports Now about them going over the AFC East. It was a great conversation, very interesting. Go check that out and subscribe. You got to subscribe to him. He's up and coming, very knowledgeable, so go check him out.
Appreciate that, buddy.
But I got to ask you, man. Number one, let me get this here. Let me get rid of this here. I don't like that. There we go. The first question I need to ask you, Q, is Brock Purdy. Because a lot of folks compare Brock Purdy to Tua Tagovailoa, and Brock Purdy just got the bag. He just got paid. So tell me about that. What's his contract like? What do you think about Brock Purdy and the contract and the comparison with him and Tua Tagovailoa?
So the first and foremost, the money is obviously the issue, right? And so, I think a lot of people, I think where it starts with a lot of people, man, and Brock Purdy is, I think he hasn't shaken the Mr. Irrelevant tag, I think, in a lot of people's eyes, right? And so because people are still kind of looking at him under that lens, I feel like the talk and the thought of him getting this money, which we knew it was coming, right? The Niners weren't
right.
The Niners were not going to go in a different direction, right? This is their quarterback.
Yeah.
This wasn't for show. This wasn't, to appease, Brock or his agent or whoever. This is their guy. It's been their guy. And no matter how you got to him being your guy, he is him. Like he's your starter. And I don't understand how at this point we haven't looked past the Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft, lens, right? We have to move past this thing. I mean, that's at this point ancient history. I understand that being a seventh rounder, isn't the norm when it comes to successful quarterbacks. Typically, that means you are a career backup if you spend any time in the league, right? Seventh round quarterbacks don't start. Ryan Fitzpatrick had a pretty successful career, obviously, as a Fins fan, had some really good years, put up some really big numbers in terms of offense and the whole deal, but never landed the type of deal that Brock just landed. And so, when you're looking at, what it is that he's due to make, 265 million bucks, 181 guaranteed.
Woo!
Yeah, that's a lot of cash, right? A lot of cash, and so to break down some of it in terms of like where he lands, right now he's tied for 7th in average annual value, tied with Jared Goff, right, for 7th. And when you look at the people above him, right, there's a lot of people. Let me take that back. There's a few quarterbacks who obviously you look at and go, yeah, clearly those guys are. I mean, there's no question that those guys are dudes, right? I mean, some of the guys you're looking at, a guy like Josh Allen, and so on and so, Joe Burrow, right? But then you also have guys, ahead of him, guys like Dak, right? Which I don't understand, where the Cowboys, thought it was a good idea to, pay that guy $60 million bucks, but I think it's one of those deals where, and I've always said it's easier to get rid of somebody, right, than to find that replacement. Right. We don't, it's easy to fire, yeah. Like as a coach, right. Oh, let's fire him. Okay. Well, who's going to replace him? Right. And that's where the problem comes in again with the Cowboys. Like, okay, well, yeah, we're not going to re-sign Dak. Right. Okay. Well, now who are you going to go and get? Who's the next guy up that you can get who's going to be able to fill that spot? Who's, and that's up for debate. However, everybody wants to, to break that down. But, again, kind of the Purdy deal is he's their guy. They drafted him. They developed him. And when we start to look at what his numbers are like since he became a starter, I don't understand how anybody looks at that and says, well, he doesn't deserve what he got. Right. They didn't make him the highest paid quarterback in the league. A lot of people are like, oh, they're going to, he's been better than Dak, so they're going to make him the highest paid quarterback in the league. They didn't do that. Right. 7th in average annual value, the ends up being 53 a year. And so, again, you're looking at guys above Jordan Love. What has Jordan Love? Jordan Love had a like a 7-game stretch, at the end of last year that got him paid. What has he done? Right. Dak, Dak has been good in the playoffs, or I'm sorry, in the regular season. Has been terrible. Right. Yeah, he's been a good regular season quarterback. Right. Hasn't been anything in the playoffs. Right. Lamar, is kind of right on him. A guy who, obviously, again, he's a 2-time MVP. But what has he done in the playoffs, right? And I'm not saying that Brock is a better quarterback than Lamar.
Sure,
but somebody has to convince me that Brock Purdy is not a better quarterback right now than Jordan Love is. Jordan Love, right? The physical traits, right? And if you can debate that all you want, but in terms of what they've done since Brock has become the starter, you can't tell me right now that Jordan Love is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. No matter how you want to deliver that argument. You can like what he is physically. He's not a better quarterback than Brock Purdy, in my personal opinion. Right. So a lot of people are making a big deal about the money because, again, through, still looking at it through that lens. But again, everything you look at, let's look at some of the numbers again, because again, context, right? The numbers don't lie.
Right.
Numbers don't lie. Right. So he's just ahead of Justin Herbert and Lamar Jackson. Right. Those guys are like 52 and change. Purdy's at 53. Justin Herbert, all the hype in the world, and I'm not telling you that he's not going to be, great moving forward. What has he done compared to, Brock Purdy? Regular season, has he been to the playoffs? Has he done anything? No. Lamar, obviously, 2-time MVP, playoffs, has done nothing, for example, right? Goff, who he's tied with, has Goff been, Goff has been, pretty good, right? First, again, literally opposite ends of the spectrum. First pick in the draft, Purdy last pick in the draft. But when you look at what it is they've done, right? Yeah. I mean, again, very comparable, different offenses, right? Goff, put up, great numbers under Ben Johnson in that offense. We'll see how he does this year without him, right? And he's been under McVay, right? So when people talk about Brock Purdy, oh, he's been under Shanahan. Well, Goff has been under McVay, right? Who you can put right in that same tier as Kyle Shanahan, who's won a Super Bowl, right? So technically, I guess he's been more successful. And then a guy, Ben Johnson, who ran an offense, he was surrounded by a ton of talent and who put up almost historic numbers. Last year, they were highest scoring offense in the league and the whole deal. So this narrative that, Brock Purdy plays, he plays for Shanahan and is surrounded by a bunch of talent. Burrow, look at the guys that Burrow is throwing to, right? I mean, Jamar Chase, best receiver in the league, in my opinion, right? T. Higgins, is I don't know. There's a better number 2 receiver, right? I mean, you can make an argument for a couple people. For a long time, he was, handing it off to Kenny Mixon, right? I mean, again, surrounded by talent, but for some reason, Brock Purdy is the only one, who that's a downgrade. Oh, well, look at who he's playing for. Look at what he's throwing to. Even though last year the Niners were 32nd in separation in terms of in terms of their group of receivers, right?
Didn't know that.
Right. Yeah. When you look at what he did last year, 4th in total offense in the league, and played a total of 57 offensive snaps together with Kittle, Debo, Christian McCaffrey, and Brandon Ayuk. Those guys together played 57 total snaps for the Niners. Not to mention you didn't have Trent Williams, who's the best left tackle in the league, for the better part of the year. They still had the number 4 offense in the league, right, with the number 32 separation in terms of a receiving core. So, again, this narrative that, everything is tailor-made for him. Everything is done around him. He doesn't do anything. I'd push back heavy on that narrative. Heavy. Again, I think it's lazy. I just think it's a really lazy take by people who just aren't, they're just either not informed, really not doing their homework, not looking at the numbers, not digging deeper into the numbers. But what he's done, you can't argue. And I think that's why we're here with him getting, what he got.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points. And also you said put things into context, and you're right. Now I don't know all the terms of the contract, but that you said, what is it? 265 million.
Yeah. 265, which it's 181. It's 181 guaranteed. And so the majority, of the money. I'm sorry, but I go ahead. Yeah.
No. So the 181 is fully guaranteed. That's what I look at, right?
Yeah.
So the 260, I'm sure it comes with all kinds of incentives and all that kind of stuff for him to make that 285 or 265 million. Plus, it's a 5-year contract. So 5 years divided by 181, because remember, it's only 181 is guaranteed. 100%. That comes to like $36 million a year. That's what people don't look at. They just look at 265 million. Well, no, he's not getting 265 million. He's got to meet those incentives. He's got to play those 5 years, the whole bit. Now I don't know how the contract is constructed, but anyway. So you made some great points, and I agree. I mean, he's taken his team to the Super Bowl, right?
Taking the team to a Super Bowl
Take him to the Super Bowl. He's got a lot of accomplishments.
Year 1, the NFC title game, right? Went 13-4, made an NFC title game. Year 2, 12-5, top 5 in MVP voting.
Right.
That's lost on a lot of people. A lot of people don't recognize that. Year 2, as Mr. Irrelevant, 12-5, top 5 in MVP voting, made the Super Bowl, right? And let's not make it so that he's getting the blame for them losing that Super Bowl. Like, they didn't lose the Super Bowl because of Brock Purdy. He wasn't over his skis. The moment wasn't too big for him. You got to remember, this is a guy who at Iowa State was the program, right? At Iowa State, this guy was the program. And what they did at Iowa State had never been done before Brock Purdy. The guy started from day one at Iowa State, was a 4-year starter, a guy who won big games, big bowl games, won conference titles. So, this wasn't a guy, who did nothing. I mean, this guy had the pedigree and the whole deal. The problem was, the measurables weren't there, right? He not the tallest, not the fastest, not the strongest arm, but the guy wins. The guy's a leader. People follow him. People respond to him, right? And so the intangibles are there, but the measurables may not necessarily be there. Again, height, weight, speed, arm strength, that kind of thing. But a guy who's more than mobile, a guy who gets out of the pocket consistently and regularly and makes plays downfield. Right, a guy who doesn't take bad sacks, doesn't turn the ball over, doesn't get his team beat. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, look at what Jimmy Garoppolo did." Yes, right, but where did Jimmy Garoppolo go after he left the Niners? Right, again, he made a Super Bowl, 100%, right? But again, you're not going to convince me that Brock Purdy isn't a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo was in the same system, right? And so. There again, a lot of people make that comparison, and I get it, right? Same position, same team, and the whole nine. But I think everybody can agree at this point that Brock Purdy has way outperformed anything that Jimmy Garoppolo ever did in a Niners uniform.
Yeah, I agree. So let's shift gears. Let's go to Tua Tagovailoa. What's your take on Tua Tagovailoa, his contract, and all that good stuff. And how do people compare him to Tua Tagovailoa? In your opinion, and what you're hearing?
I think if it kind of starts off, with them, I think just the size component, right? I think both guys are kind of similar, similar height. I think most people would compare them, very similarly in terms of athleticism, right? None of them are great athletes, right? I think they've got enough escapability and that kind of thing where I think they differ, right? Is Brock Purdy, to this point in his career, he's been a more durable guy, right? He's a guy who really doesn't take sacks, who tends to not take hits when he escapes the pocket. He's a guy who slides. He's a guy who is again, when he gets out of the pocket, he's either, if he's not throwing it to somebody, he's either running out of bounds. He plays safe. He's a guy who's not going to take big hits and everything like that. So I think when you're looking at when you're looking at comparing the two. Again, I think the measurables are comparable, right? One's a righty, one's a lefty, but I think the measurables are comparable. But where I think they differ, right, is, again, Brock has been a little bit safer, right, in terms of his approach. In terms, again, when he leaves the pocket and the whole nine, his team has been overall more successful with him at quarterback, right? And again, he's a guy who's made the playoffs, right? It's a guy who's been successful in the playoffs, right? He's got 4 wins since becoming the starter, right? Which is third in the league in that same time. And so that's kind of where I think they differ. Every Tua and him are similar, that they both kind of get heat for the money they make. I think a lot of people, agree on both of them that they shouldn't be making the money that they make. But, listen, a lot of people talk about, they're system quarterbacks. Look, I'll say here, like I've said it before, there's probably 3 to 5 guys in the NFL that aren't system quarterbacks, right? Josh Allen, no matter where you put him, that guy's going to be a stud, right?
100%.
Mahomes has won with very ordinary guys, as at receiver, other than Kelsey. Running back, not guys who are special or highly drafted. Receiver, same thing. O-line, shaky at tackle, good in the interior, but shaky at tackle. But by and large, has been throwing to guys who are not perennial Pro Bowlers, right? Burrow is a stud. He's got great receivers. Burrow's a stud. Lamar is the system, right? But again, it's a handful of guys in the NFL that are the system. Everybody else is part of a system, whether quarterback, whether cornerback, right? And that's the thing, and that's how you get so many guys in the NFL that are drafted later on in the draft that end up making a team and end up being successful and end up landing second contracts, third contract with teams, because it's about landing in the right system in the NFL, right? A little bit different than the NBA. And the NBA it's really easy to tell. Listen, the lottery, by and large, is where the best players across the league get drafted, right? They're usually top 10, top 12 guys, with exception. You got some guys that aren't, Jalen Brunson and Giannis and everything like that, who weren't lottery picks. But by and large, it's really easy to tell who the best players are in the NBA. And the NFL is different. In the NFL, you have a lot less time to show what it is that you have. You have to be put in the right system, and you have to take the coaching and the whole deal, because again, you have very few opportunities on game day to show what it is you're able to do. You don't have that many plays, like you do in the NBA and the whole deal. So I say that to say, when you're looking at the NFL, and when you're looking at who it is that these guys are obviously playing with, do me a favor, repeat, and because I lost my train of thought, repeat what it is that we were going through there, the question, the original question.
Yeah, the comparison between Tua Tagovailoa and Brock Purdy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So just kind of generally speaking. Yeah. So, again, speaking. Again, you're very, very similar, right? But again, they're both critiqued, right? They're both, nobody thinks they should make that money, that kind of thing. And so, and again, I'm sorry for losing my train of thought, but
no, that's fine. I do it all the time.
Yeah. but
hey, let me make mention of this. It was now I forgot it again, man. Will, I forgot what I was going to say.
I know I was going down a certain, and I started.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
And I totally forgot, because I know you had asked me a question. I think it was different than and if somebody remembers, man, put it in the comment, because I totally forgot.
No, go ahead.
But no, again, the narratives are going to be there, and it's up to those guys to dispel, everything that negative being said about them. I think, when you're talking about Tua, you're talking about a guy, who in order to prove people wrong, he's got to stay healthy. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, simply put, I mean, he's a guy who he's shown when he's healthy, that offense has shown what it is they're able to do. Right. They're an offense,
for sure.
that puts up yards, puts up numbers, and I don't think last year they were the problem. Or I'm sorry, they were the problem, which you wouldn't have thought. You would have figured the defense would have been the problem. The offense ended up being the problem, which again you wouldn't have thought. But obviously, I mean, there's context to that. There's reasons why they didn't live up to the hype. But obviously, we'll get into that. You hear me?
Yeah. About Jay, you mentioned Jay. Yeah. Jalen Hurts.
You hear me?
I'm not sure if that's me going out on your end.
You're kind of coming in and out. I'm not sure what everybody's seeing in the comments. I'm seeing you. You're coming back. Fine. You're coming back in now.
That's fine. Jalen Hurts. Yeah. What about Jalen Hurts? I know you didn't mention Jalen.
Oh, Hurts. I got you. Yeah, man. Listen, man. Before this year, I thought he was a good quarterback. I know what he did. I know he's the current Super Bowl winning quarterback. I think he's a really good quarterback. Obviously, a guy who taken in the second round. When they already had a guy like Nick Foles. Obviously, I think there was a ceiling with Nick Foles, right? And I think that's kind of why they took Jalen Hurts because of the skill set, right? Totally different than what you had with Nick Foles. And he's proven them right? I think a guy who took he took some heat, previously, but I think they validated the second round pick on him, and obviously they've extended him. He's won a Super Bowl, and so again, do I think he's a guy who is a top 5 quarterback? No, I mean I wouldn't call him that, but a guy who obviously look at what you've surrounded him with, right? And he's made there's 2 Super Bowls, right? He lost the first one, right? And so they won last year. And you can make an argument that Super Bowl that they lost, he outplayed Patrick Mahomes. He lost the game, but
he did.
But Jalen Hurts was the better quarterback in that game.
Yeah.
Right. And so, now you look at them, back to the Super Bowl, now they won it. And so, again, that validates everything.
And he outplayed him again.
And he outplayed
him again.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So you look at that again, that's total validation. That it's not like, I mean, they validated it by extending him and giving him the money that they did. Right. So, I mean, on their end, they know what they have in him. Right. And listen, man, we're getting to the point now with a guy like Howie Roseman that what he does, it doesn't matter how much you don't like it or don't think it should happen. Howie Roseman he's earned all the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't matter the move. It doesn't matter, whether it's they release somebody, whether they sign somebody, whether they draft somebody, whether they extend somebody, whatever he decides that he's going to do, you have to let it play out. Like it's just, it's gotten to the point where you can't really argue what it is that he does. I think he's the best GM in the league, and I don't know that it's close. I don't know there's a close second, and so, again, man, I mean, you look at what they've done on that team and what they've surrounded him with, and he's gotten to the point where, man, he doesn't try to do a lot because he doesn't have to, right? He's a guy who leads, he's a leader, he's a quiet leader nonetheless, a guy who the players, respond to and follow and the whole deal. But man, when you're surrounded by the talent that you're surrounded with, best offensive line in the league. And again, I don't know that there's much of an argument there. You can make a case. I wouldn't say that they have the best receiving core in the league because, again, I think Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, I think it's hard to put anybody above them. But when you look at the collection of pass catchers that they have with A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, you have Dallas Goedert, right? You're handing the ball off to Saquon. Again, the O-line and the whole deal, like, man, it's hard to not succeed in that offense, right? If everybody's healthy and the whole deal, he's a guy who gets the ball out to his playmakers. He tends to not make big mistakes. I mean, he's good outside of the pocket, and so, I mean, listen, top 5 quarterback. I wouldn't put him there necessarily, but I don't think it's a stretch to call that guy a top 10 quarterback at this point.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And for sure, Howard Roseman has put together a phenomenal organization.
That roster is incredible.
Yeah,
Man. That roster is incredible at every position group. They're loaded. They're loaded. I mean, and they have a great mix of veterans, but they're really like their guys. Their main contributors are guys who are not old.
Exactly.
The majority
a lot of youngsters.
Yeah, a lot of guys, and kind of like that mid-20 range, and they extend guys early. They rarely make mistakes at the top of the draft. I mean, they're really set up to be a problem for a really long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to talk about the title of the podcast tonight. The secret sauce. What the secret sauce is for the Miami Dolphins to be successful in 2025. And I'm going to start off by saying, think of this as a bowl, right? You got a bowl, okay? And you got ingredients in that recipe, and in order for it to be success, everything has to be perfect, right? You have to have the right ingredient, but there's that secret sauce, and I'm going to tell you what that secret sauce is here at the end. And it's very common. We talk about it all the time, but it's something that I was thinking about, and something that one of the players on our Miami Dolphins football team, Chop Robinson, said, and it kind of caught me and got my attention. I said, man, I didn't even think of that. Talk about it all the time, but kind of nonchalantly. But yeah, I think this could be something that the Dolphins can be successful if this happens. So here's the thing. What they have to do to be successful in 2025. Number one, Tua Tagovailoa, as you mentioned, he's got to stay healthy. All right, so you got to put that in the bowl. That's one of the ingredients. He has to stay healthy. He's got to play a full season of 17 games. Number two, we got to get this running game going this year. Okay, we got Ollie Gordon. A lot of hype with him. He's supposed to be a power back runner. We got A-Chan. We got Jalen Wright. I think that's a really great 1-2-3 punch. And then you got Madison. Let's not forget about Madison that we got in the offseason. Alexander Madison. So those are the ingredients. Put some more of those ingredients in that bowl, right? So we got to get that running game going. Those guys, Ollie Gordon has to show up. He has to show what all the hype is about him, right? He said he already put his foot in his mouth and said, if people are in my way, I'm going to run over them, right? So it's either me or him. So that's Ollie Gordon. And I like that attitude, that physicality that he brings to the table. So that's the ingredient.
Like the confidence. I like the confidence.
Yeah. Love the confidence. So that's a great ingredient, that confidence and that power back and adding those guys to the mix. Then Tyreek Hill, he's got to come alive this year, man. He cannot be he cannot be on the sidelines this year, man. He has to step up. He has to be the old Tyreek of 2000 and was it 21, 22, one of those years. The first year Mike McDaniel was the coach. He's got to show up, man. And I know he was hurt a lot last year. He just had surgery, wrist surgery, and all that. Look, he quit on the team and all that stuff. Okay, I get it. But he's here. I don't think Miami's going to, they're going to get off him. He's going to be around this year. So if he's going to be around, then he needs to show out, man. He needs to be that Tyreek Hill of old. So that's other part of that ingredient in there, right? You put that in the bowl. We also added another tall, big wide receiver, Akeem Westbrook. So Mike McDaniel, he's another part of this ingredient, right? He's got to get him involved. He's got to get Ollie Gordon involved. He's got to give him the carries. He's got to get Akeem Westbrook, utilize him in the best way for this Miami Dolphins football team. So you put him in there. That's a good addition to the team, I think. Something that we haven't seen in a while here with the Miami Dolphins. So that's another ingredient. Then we go across to the tight end. Add him to the bowl. Brown, good blocker. I don't know what he's going to add to the receiving core, but he's another piece to this blocking that we needed so desperately, right? And speaking of blocking, we added Jonah Savania. He's got to show up. He's got to pan out. He's got to make an impact. Okay, he really does, especially if we're going to get this running game established. He's a physical guy. He's a big guy. Let's see if he can use that physicality to push the pile, and allow Ollie Gordon to find that, seam and use his physicality to go through that hole, right? Or outside zone, Achane, right? Then we've got to see James Daniels. James Daniels we got in the offseason. He's got to be in that mix, okay? He's another guy that he's between the center. You got Jonah, you got Brewer, and you got James Daniels. That's in the middle of the line, right? That's your core right there. Those guys got to show up. They got to push the pile this year if we're going to, use that physicality to get that running game going, right? The passing game, I'm not too worried about the pass blocking. I think those guys that are on the line are adequate or enough to hold their man for a couple seconds, right? Because that's all Tua needs. He needs about 2.3, 2.5 seconds, sometimes less, to throw the ball. So it's pretty tough for your defense of linemen to put any pressure or to get in and for a sack on, let's say, Tua Tagovailoa, right? So, excuse me. Yeah. So we've got to that line has to show up this year, right? So that's the other ingredient, right? Now, also, we've got to get Jonah Smith involved again. I don't know how much he's going to be involved this year, but I know last year he was involved a lot, along with Achane, in that passing game. I don't want to see Achane being the guys getting all the bell cow for our team, right? Put that on Jalen, maybe Jalen Wright and Ollie Gordon, a little bit of Madison, right? All right, so those are your ingredients on offense. Defense, Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb. They've got to be the Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips of old, right? They're coming off injuries. Severe injuries. Jalen Phillips, another injury twice in 2 years. In 2 years. Bradley Chubb, he's got an injury history. How much is that going to impact him, right? Same with James Daniels, right? He came off an Achilles. They all got to stay healthy. Let's put it this way. Everybody has to be healthy, right? Of course, we're going to lose a few people here and there to injuries. For how long, we don't know. How much of an impact it's going to make, I don't know. But for the most part, Dolphins have to stay healthier, more than they've stayed healthy in the past. Anyway, so you got Jalen Phillips. You got Bradley Chubb. Chop Robinson. He was making some improvements last year. I mentioned him earlier about he was the one that made the comment that this is the ingredients that's going to possibly make this team successful. But those are all the ingredients, right? And you got Chop Robinson. He's got to play. He's got to make improvements. He's got to play his game. Maybe improve on the running game, right? Run defense. Okay. Then you've got the linebacking core, Jordan Brooks. If he can be the same Jordan Brooks, that'll be great. You got Terrell Dobson. You got we got Gay. We got Willie Gay and Britt. We brought in those guys. All they got to do is play solid, man. They don't have to be all pro. Just play solid. Put them in the mix as well, right? Got to put them in that bowl. Now, the only ingredient that hopefully this is the ingredient that isn't left out this year. One of the ingredients. Defensive backfield. Got to have that ingredient in there. That ingredient isn't in there, this defense is going to struggle. I don't care how much pressure you put on the quarterback, because we are facing a bunch of really good quarterbacks, not just average or above average quarterback, really good quarterbacks this year, right? That defensive backfield, those quarterbacks will eat them alive. They are not playing up to par. The two safeties we got, Ashton Davis, Malavalvu, however you pronounce his name, we got from Detroit. He's got to play up. They got to play up to par, man. They gotta really come along. I mean, they got to play solid, really solid. They don't have to be great, just solid, right? I'm not expecting them to be Jalen Ramsey or Xavier Howard or anything like that, but they got to be solid above the, across the board there. Same with the cornerbacks. Cam Smith has to step up. Whoever's starting, Marshall, we got in the draft. Hopefully he steps up. Maybe he's the starter. Maybe Storm Duck is the starter. I don't know, but one of those guys has got to step up and take that starting role. So that's the ingredients, right, in that bowl, right? That's the ingredients. But what we got to put on there, the finishing touches in that ingredients, right, in that recipe. You put it in the oven, you bake it, whatever you do, and you take it out. The secret sauce to the Miami Dolphins football team this year is chemistry. Chemistry. They have got to start developing a chemistry together, okay? And that starts in training camp coming up. If they don't develop a chemistry together, I don't care how good they play as individual players. If that chemistry isn't there, if they're not communicating, right? They're not reading each other. If they're not bringing each other up, they're not edifying each other, right? Then this team is going to be in bad shape this year. But that is the secret sauce to their success. And I think they can do it. I think the way that I've heard Achane talking, I've heard Chop Robinson talking, they're not really boasting. They're just being confident, and they feel that they've got to develop the chemistry as well in that communication, and that's the success, the key to the 2025 Miami Dolphins. Q, how do you feel about that on your end?
When you told me about specifically the secret sauce, I went with a recipe that's got a few less ingredients, right? And so when you texted me about the topic, right? And I think I was probably hungry around the time that you mentioned the title to the show. I think I was probably hungry. I think I was looking for what I was going to eat. But to me, I went with a recipe that is a little simpler. And I don't know how well the chat, I don't know how well, you do in the kitchen, right? I'm not great, right? I dabble a little bit, and I like being collaborative, right, in the kitchen, right? But I like simplicity. And I say that to ask you, right? Have you ever made an Alfredo sauce before? Have you ever? First of all, do you like the kitchen? Do you like getting in the kitchen and doing anything?
I like getting in the kitchen.
Or you're more like a grill guy? Are you more like a grill guy, or like what do you like? Which one do you prefer?
No, I kind of do both. I'm not good at either. I'm not good at grilling, and I'm not good at cooking in the kitchen. I mean, I can cook enough to survive.
Yeah, there you go. Right, you're not going to starve.
Yeah,
you're not going to win Iron Chef, but you're not going to starve.
Not going to starve.
Yeah.
No.
There you go. And listen, that's not a bad place to be. It's not a bad place to be.
Exactly.
But so when I was thinking, right, you told me, all right, secret sauce for the Dolphins. I thought of a simple, and I don't know if you're a pasta guy, right? I like pasta.
Yeah, I like pasta.
I like a good Alfredo sauce, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anybody in the chat what they feel about the sauce, or if you have any suggestions. I've seen, I haven't made it myself, but I've eaten it, right? And people who've made a really good Alfredo sauce, but it's a good Alfredo sauce is really very simple, right? Really, for the most part, it's like three main ingredients, right? You got heavy whipping cream, right? It's kind of your big one, right? Butter and Parmesan cheese, right? All the stuff that's good for you, right? Heavy whipping cream, butter, Parmesan cheese, right? That is the basis of a very simple yet very good, not jarred, right? Not BS, from the shelf, very good, very simple sauce. Right? Three ingredients, right? And of course, a little garlic, salt, pepper, that kind of, but again, your three main ingredients.
Hey.
So I thought about that when I thought about what it is that we were talking about in terms of the Dolphin secret sauce. And to me, and we had kind of similar, we had very similar thoughts on that. to me, first and foremost, Tua's health. Right? That
100%.
that is as simple as an ingredient as you can have. Right? He's your franchise. Let's not get into what a franchise quarterback is and the definition and is he is. Listen, he's the franchise quarterback. Let's call it what it is. Let's not.
He is. He's the starter. He's the starter.
Let's not. Yeah. Let's not waste. Airtime on arguing that, and whoever wants to argue about it in the chat or whatever. Listen, he gets paid. He gets paid what he gets paid. He's your franchise quarterback, right? If that guy is healthy, you have a chance. When he's been healthy, he has shown that he can command an offense that, at the very least in the regular season, is an offense that will scare people, is an offense that will put up points, that will give their team a chance to win. I don't think you can deny that, right? But by the same token, right, like we've been talking about, in the chat with I believe it's MRAC right there. It's right. He's got to be healthy, right? And let me tell you, let me share something with you that we shared with Will in the podcast the other day. Last year, the Dolphins offense, all right, 18th in total yards, 22nd in points per game.
Yep.
21st in rushing yards per game. I think they rushed total for like 1,700 yards last year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For the Dolphins to win, they have to be better than that all across the board. But they also need Tua to be healthy. How many games did Tua miss last year, Steve? If you remember off the top of your head,
6 games.
Did he miss 6 games? All right. So what I have written down is in the time that he didn't play, they scored roughly, I think, like 40 total points. 40 total points. All right. I saw a stretch of 4 missed games, and they scored. Yep. They literally scored 40 total points in those games. They averaged 10 points a game when he wasn't there. Right. They were playing, Snoop Huntley and and all that. So for that team to be successful, Tua has to be available. Period, point blank in a story. There's no way around that one.
That's fair for sure.
Yeah. Second ingredient for me, an effective run game, right? So kind of similar to what you were talking about. This team, and again, we talk about where McDaniel came from, where Mike McDaniel came from. Where did he come from? San Francisco. Came from Kyle Shanahan. Everything with Kyle Shanahan is based on the run game. While McDaniel was in San Francisco, he was the run game coordinator. Kyle Shanahan was the play caller. He was essentially the offensive coordinator, but Mike McDaniel was the run game coordinator in San Francisco.
Exactly.
He's got to get back to that. But obviously, we need some retooling on the O-line, right? Because, it is X's and O's are important. Jimmy's and Joe's are more important, right? So if you don't have the guys to run your system, then that's it's a bunch of X's and O's on a dry erase board or on a clipboard. Like, again, they have to get the O-line right. But they need that 100%. Run game because everything is predicated with Tua off of play action. Period, point blank, right? Tua, you don't want to drop him back 35 times a game. That period, right? So you have to run the ball, play action, get those guys, in spaces, right? Waddle, Tyreek, get those guys in space and let them cook. That's just how it goes. The third ingredient for me, and really simple, was just avoid drama. I think there was way too much drama last year. There was the stuff with.
Wow, I didn't think of that. Yeah,
it was like week 1. It was like week 1, a couple hours before.
With Tyreek.
Tyreek Hill is getting handcuffed and thrown on the ground by Miami-Dade PD. Like that was literally week 1, and it never went away.
News.
Like it was just drama every single week. It seemed like, right, and especially like to start the season, it was just a lot of drama, right? It was like Tyreek Hill, every time there was a mic in his face, he was saying something. You're like, what are you talking about, right? Jalen Ramsey, also, right, kind of brought a little bit of drama, and the problems with the Dolphins kind of always, Chris Greer always finds a way to enter the chat, right? Because I think kind of everything kind of comes back to Chris Greer and the decisions he's made and the decisions he hasn't made. And that's kind of one of the problems when you talk about like free agency and the danger of bringing in guys who started their career somewhere else, right? Who don't necessarily have that buy-in into your system, right? I mean, they're there, they're making a ton of money, right? So, they're there. but again, that's kind of one of the dangers of spending all that money in free agency, where those other kind of mercenaries, right? They tend not to really be, super bought into, everything that has to do with your organization, the culture and the system and the whole deal. So, and then on top of that, what ends up happening is, again, now you extended those guys, right? You gave Tyreek money you didn't have to give him. You gave Jalen Ramsey money you didn't have to give him, right? And now what happens? Now you're talking about trading Jalen Ramsey, and now there's speculation, on is Tyreek Hill going to be here? Is he not? Then on top of that, you look at those guys and their age, right? Tyreek Hill is, he's kind of, even though again he's still a guy who scares defenses and everything, but a guy who you're paying a ton of money to, who's in that 30 range. Jalen Ramsey in that 30 range. Bradley Chubb, money in that 30 range. Terry Armstead, so you're on the older end of things with your guys who are top of the market guys, right? You're older and really expensive, right? And then the problem that comes there, that's not necessarily, the problem. The problem is when you're giving those guys, top of the market type of money, you have to hit on your draft picks, right? And that's something that Greer, hasn't done consistently, right? So you have top of the market guys who are expensive. They've been hurt. They've been problems, right? Jalen Phillips, right? He's been hurt. Bradley Chubb's been hurt on defense the whole nine. And so, but behind those guys, you don't have enough money to really build, a lot of depth behind them. And then you've missed on draft picks.
Good point. Mm-hmm.
So, listen, last year, again, the defense wasn't the problem. They were missing some guys, right? And Chop kind of became, he became a factor kind of end of the year. And I think you have to like what you have in Chop Robinson, coming in 25.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a guy who, if you don't have to worry about him as a number one threat in terms of your pass rush, if Jalen Phillips is healthy, Bradley Chubb is healthy, and you add Chop to that mix, I mean, listen, you're doing some things. I think Anthony Weaver really has to like what he has in terms of, of the pass rush, right? The guy in Anthony Weaver who, listen, that defense, for whatever they were missing, right? I mean, they weren't great at linebacker. DB wasn't great, but by and large, with all the categories that mattered, they were in the top 10 in most of those categories. Like they were single digit.
They were top 10 for sure.
In most defensive categories. So you have to like that you have continuity on that side of the ball, bringing him back.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you get some health in the front seven, right? Jordan Brooks, I think, is a legit linebacker. I like him a lot. DBs,
he's solid.
Yeah, the DBs we'll see. Hopefully, again, if you don't add anything else, I can't imagine they're not going to add anybody else. I know they have an offer out to Russell Douglas, who Well,
they also not to interrupt you, but they also are eyeing Asante Samuel as well.
Yeah, Asante Samuel's out there. The problem with Asante Samuel is he had a neck procedure, so they're thinking that his market is going to heat up, probably closer to regular training camp. He's probably going to have, once his physical kind of checks out, people are thinking that he'll have, because again, I think he's only like 26 years old. He's a guy who's
he's young. He's only been league for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's a guy who's better in zone than he is, man to man, but a guy with a lot of ability.
And that's what we play, zone.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's Weaver's defense.
Exactly. So kind of tailor made for that type of scheme. The health is kind of, and obviously the neck is kind of a big deal when you're talking about a football player. So absolutely. I think a guy who the Dolphins will have some interest in, when that time comes. But again, he has to get healthy. I think they have an offer out to Russell Douglas. If I'm not mistaken. I think I saw the other day. I know he's in Seattle and a couple other teams. So, maybe a guy a guy who's a veteran, who's capable. But I think the prevailing thought, at least to me, based on what they haven't done, is that front seven is going to have to be kind of what helps out, the back end, right? Those guys are going to have to do
100%. Yeah,
and that's what
sure.
you're going to have to count on. But there again, a guy like Seiler, right? Now, again, you have, Chop, Chubb, Jalen Phillips. I mean, you've got dudes who can get after the quarterback, again, if they're healthy.
Yeah.
So I think you have to like the defense.
Key.
You have to like the defense. You have to like, another year with Anthony Weaver. But the offense was the one that really held this team back last year. I just think, again, lack of health, the offensive line was a problem. Tyreek Hill regressed. And I think he had, and that's a problem, man. You talked, again, like we talked about, right? No drama and the whole deal is, And that's kind of something similar to the Niners, right? The Niners last year, just and not to take it there, but just kind of for context, like the Niners had the drama that surrounded the Niners last year. Some of it self-inflicted, some of it not. They just not only did they have the injuries and a ton of games missed by Pro Bowlers and the whole thing, but there's a lot of stuff like off the field that just kind of prevented them, from being able to really be a good team, and go far. Obviously they were 16-11, so a lot that has to do with that, but.
Right.
You have to, there's so many things that have to go right, for a team in order to go far. And one of them is just, no drama, right? Just like you mentioned, right? A team that's tight knit, close, that the chemistry, exists there in the whole deal. And so, it's funny because Emmerich just said there can't be chemistry with McDaniel because he doesn't care about the defensive side of the ball. He's the offensive coach. The team has two parts. Listen, there is certainly a case to be made for that. I don't know. I think he doesn't care about the defensive side of the ball. I think it's I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that. I'd push back on that just a little bit, but he did come from an organization that by and large just kind of did. It was like, when Robert Saleh was there, Robert Saleh was kind of the head coach, of the defense. Right. I mean, he was a DC, but he really did. He was kind of the head coach of that defense. And that's what kind of, he parlayed that into a head coaching position. Right. And so, but again, don't forget Kyle Shanahan also, they run a wide 9. Like whoever is his DC has to run a wide 9 because that's what he prefers to run. He doesn't run the defense, but he does prefer to run a wide 9. And that's what the defense, whatever coordinator is there has to run that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, I think, I don't know that Emmerich is necessarily wrong, in terms of maybe just a lack of attention to that side of the ball. But also now with Anthony Weaver there, I think he has shown that, listen, he's got control of that defense. Again, they were good last year.
Yeah, 100%.
And so, again, I think another year of continuity in the same system. The problem is that when you have a personality on your defense, like a Jalen Ramsey, it's a loud type of personality. It's a personality that every time he gets near a mic, he says something, now it goes viral and people are sharing it and the whole, right. And so
absolutely. There's
definitely been some question about him, previously, right? Jacksonville, I think.
He has a history
out there that's why they got rid of him. They got rid of him because he wasn't good in the locker room. Right. And so, he went to LA, a pretty relaxed, laid back coach in McVay, who I think, he got along pretty well with, but, they didn't really want to pay him the money. They got rid of him, and that kind of thing. So he ends up in Miami. But I think there's always kind of been, even at Florida State, when he was in college, like he was a guy who, again, was always in front of a mic. He was talking trash on the field. He talked a lot of trash. And it's like, that's a fine line to toe, right? I think, you like having those guys on your team. But there's a really thin line between just enough and too much. And I think Jalen Ramsey, sometimes he steps above that line into the too much realm. And I think that causes, some rifts and some stuff going on in the locker room. When your locker room isn't really buttoned up, I think it could really cause your group of guys some issues and some problems.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And as far as my opinion, as far as McDaniel goes and Anthony Weaver, I'm not concerned about McDaniel over, having anything to do with the defense side of the ball. You know what? I prefer he stays away from that because I don't think that's a clue. Well, I mean, sure he does. He's been in the NFL a long time, but I'm just saying,
it's just not his specialty.
It's not his specialty, right? It's not his cup of tea. And Anthony Weaver, I think, would prefer it that way. That he just let him. He would rather, him run the show than McDaniel interfering with his side of the ball. And as you said, you made a great point. It's true. McDaniel's the coach of the offense. Weaver's the coach of the defense. Now, McDaniel should be the overseer of the defense, but I don't think he had any reason. I don't think he had any reason to be that way last year with Weaver.
No,
Weaver did an outstanding job.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to worry about it. So that
year one, they were top 10 in every major category. So I don't think there's necessarily something where he has to overreach. Listen, I don't think there's meetings going on, without McDaniel necessarily being a part of them, right? I would imagine you get in your big defensive meeting and stuff. I would imagine McDaniel is in there, like he's sitting in on them, right? But again, I think Anthony
Right.
Weaver has shown
Right.
he's got control of that side of the ball. He's got that unit isn't a problem. That unit is not a problem.
Yeah, that
McDaniel needs to worry about the
it's not.
offense.
Yeah, it's not. The only problem I have with the defense is they need to get better at turnovers. They need to make some more turnovers, more interceptions, and they got to get to the quarterback because they were very. I mean, as far as sacks go, they were in pressures. They were 14th, but as far as sacks, they were way down at the list. As far as interceptions, way down at the list. As far as turnovers as a whole, they were way down there at the list. So they've got to make those improvements, right? They've got to if they're going to be, because they're playing a lot of good teams this year, and a lot of good quarterbacks. So there's no room for error, especially in that defensive backfield this year. And if anything, they've got to make the other team make errors, make mistakes.
I think
That's going to help them moving forward.
100%. I think another, and again, man, this time of the year for me, I think the NFL, they do such a good job of making every part of the year, I should say, intriguing for different reasons, right? The draft kind of just ended, right, with our rookie mini camp, and even then, like they always give you something to talk about, right? And
absolutely.
This is one of those divisions right here that I think, again, interesting. Every division is interesting for a different reason. This is one of those that's interesting when we talk about Mike McDaniel, because you really have to look at him and wonder, listen, if things don't go, like I would imagine if you're picking head coaches that are on the hot seat, I would imagine Mike McDaniel has to be in that conversation.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's on hot
year 4
yeah.
and the expectations and kind of like, they hit the ground running, like literally did really well on, I mean, they were putting up points. I mean, they hung 70 on Denver, right. Not too long ago. And, so you were looking at that trajectory, and kind of going this way. And now all of a sudden it's like, now they've
big dip,
and so, I don't like, am I like, am I off my rocker? Or am I, off base by saying that, I would imagine that if you made a list of hot seat candidates in terms of the head coaching position, if Mike McDaniel isn't number one, and I'm sure there's probably somebody that's higher. I just have to look at all divisions, but I would imagine Mike McDaniel has to be on that list of 5-ish guys. Mike McDaniel has to be in that 3 to 4 range, if I had to guess.
And I think your guess would be correct, because I believe he is. He's on my hot seat. Oh, what am I though, right?
Well,
but he's on my hot seat.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're an informed and educated fan, right? I mean, I think that, listen, you're not the decision maker, but listen, if you think it and I think it, I can't imagine the Dolphins front office doesn't think it, right? Because you're falling short of expectations, man. When you're paying guys, when you're paying Tyreek Hill like $30 million, right? Jalen Waddle makes what, 26, 27,
he's
million
up
bucks.
there, yeah, he's up
right?
there
I mean,
well.
Chubb makes $100 million. Jalen Ramsey is I think the highest paid corner in the league. Like when you're paying those and your quarterback, right? Same thing, right? When you talk about you're paying those guys that type of money, there are expectations that come with salary, right?
For sure.
And when you're not meeting those expectations, the easiest person to remove is the coach, because you can get rid of the coach and you don't have to worry about salary cap. You don't have to worry about it. Like, you can't just cut Tyreek Hill. You can't just cut Bradley Chubb. You can't just cut Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
Like, those guys are a pain in the ass. There's a process that has to play out. It's not so with the coach. When the coach isn't doing his job, you don't have to worry about dead cap hit. You don't have to, you can get rid of the damn coach, 7 games in and name an interim and then start your coaching search. So it's a different deal when you're talking about a coach. And honestly, like this, to me, this year really has the potential to, if it doesn't go well, those first 10 games, if it doesn't go well, I could really, really see a world in where they make a change like fairly early on and say, hey, you know what? We're going in a different direction. Who they target and everything. Again, different story for a different time. And
Anthony Weaver. No, but here's what I was going to make. Here's what I make mention about. I know a lot of folks are talking about, Chris Greer, this is it. This is his last season and all this kind of stuff. No, I don't agree with that. Although I would like for him to go or whatever they do to just here, but it ain't happening. He's a survivor, man. He's been here for over 20 years, 25, almost 30
It's
years
impressive.
now.
Yeah.
He's a survivor. You know, he ain't going anywhere. Stephen Ross is too loyal. They're loyal to each other. They're like this, right? So I don't think he's going anywhere. If anybody, it's like you said, it's Mike McDaniel. That's who I think is going to go. If this team, as you said, in the first 10 games, if they're like, 3-7 or even 5-5, I think McDaniel's he's gonna get a hard look from this organization and say, "Look, dude, you ain't cutting the mustard, man. Even at 5-5." So yeah, I think he'll be the first to go.
Yeah, and C-Double, he asked a good question. Right? If Tua hadn't been injured, with the Dolphins that made the playoffs, I mean, they weren't super far from making it last year.
Yeah,
right?
they had to win 2 more games, and they could have, made
right.
it for
Yeah,
sure.
but yeah, right. You look at it, and I think you can read. I don't think it's a stretch to say if Tua's healthy, they make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, they didn't miss the playoffs by that much. I mean, they were in it till the very end of the year, and that's with Tua. Again, I know for sure he missed 4 games. I know you mentioned 6. I didn't realize he missed.
Yeah, he misses 6.
Okay, yeah. So
he missed 6 games.
Think about that, right? I mean, I think they missed the playoffs because remember when Tyreek didn't come back into the game when he knew they were out of it.
Yeah.
What was that? That was like game what? Was that game 16, 17 when Tyreek?
Which one?
When Tyreek didn't come back into the game.
That was the last game of the season.
Yeah, remember he was like, "Oh, I knew we were out of it, so I didn't come back in."
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
that
sure.
was. So I'm sorry, week 18. That was game 17, week 18. So.
Well, yeah, that's what I meant. Week 18.
Yeah.
Right,
so they were in it till literally the very last week of the season, without Tua for you're looking at a third of the season, right? So I don't think it's a stretch to say they would have been in the playoffs. I think if he plays the whole year. Then again, you don't have numbers like 18th in total yards, 18th in total yards, 22nd in points per game, 21st in rushing yards per game. Like I think all those numbers are better. I think they win, multiple more games and they get into the playoffs. Like I don't think that's a stretch like at all. And
I don't think it's a stretch. I don't think it's a stretch either.
He's got to be healthy.
He does have to be healthy. And to be fair, as much as I talk about Tua Tagovailoa and critique him a lot. That's fair to say that we probably could have made it to the playoffs for sure. Would we have won? I don't know, but definitely could have made it there for sure. Now, we've been talking about the Dolphins. We've been talking about Brock Purdy and the 49ers and the comparisons between Tua and Brock Purdy and all that. And what I think the secret sauce is for the Dolphins to be successful. Let's talk about the AFC East. Who are the powerhouses in the AFC East this year? Who do you think are the top teams that will be up there number 1, 2, and 3, and 4?
Well, I think when I tell you, that I think the East is intriguing. One of the reasons why I think it's intriguing is because it's one of the only. I have 2 divisions, right? I have one in each conference. There's one division in each conference that I think that the winner is there's almost no pushback in terms of like who the winner is going to be, right? And again, a lot can happen. Could be totally wrong on this, but I think when you look at the AFC East, I think you're looking at the Bills, right, and then everybody else. And then just to step away just for a second, when you're looking at the NFC, I think the NFC South, I think you're looking at the Bucks and then, kind of everybody else, probably the Falcons, right after that. But
wow. We got to play the Bucks and the Falcons.
Yeah. You coming down to Atlanta for that game?
Yeah, we're coming to Atlanta for that game.
Come on down, man. We'll get together. We'll make something happen, man.
Oh no! I'm not coming down. No, I'm not coming down.
I was about to say. I thought you were calling.
I thought. No. The Dolphins.
I know the Dolphins are. I know the Dolphins are.
Okay. Yeah, I misunderstood
you.
My
man Steve's gonna be in Atlanta. My man Steve's gonna be in Atlanta.
No, you wouldn't want me in Atlanta.
About to get in trouble. No, listen. I think the Bills are such an easy answer here, right? I mean, when you look at, I think when you're looking at what the Bills did last offseason and who they lost, I think a lot of people expected them to regress, right? And I think very similarly to what the Niners are doing this offseason, right?
I didn't expect him to regress, but a lot of other
Yeah.
folks did. Not
I
me.
think, and that's what I think the East has to be kind of worried about is they were a year early last year. Like, I don't think a lot of people expect them to be as good as they were. When you look at what they lost, right? Mitch Morse, starting center, he leaves.
Yeah.
Gabe Davis, he leaves, he goes to Jacksonville, right? They give him big money, does nothing. They lose, Jordan Poyer, right? They lost. I mean, they lost Stephon Diggs being probably the biggest one, right? So the people they lost were guys that you looked at and go, how are they going to replace these dudes, right? And so through good front office, player management, right, good drafting, good coaching, like not only did they survive that, but they truthfully they got better, right? And maybe there was some of that, a lot of people underestimated them and that kind of thing. I don't think they're going to catch anybody by surprise this year, but they managed to do all that and get better. Again, those were guys who. And that's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest enemies of success in the NFL is old and expensive, right? And that's what the Bills became, and that's what the Niners became this past year, right? Guys who were old and expensive, and you have to get rid of that. And so they did that. Mm-hmm. They were really good. Josh Allen, obviously, MVP, right? And so, you end up, you now enter, 2025. You got to like what they did in the draft, and then they addressed the defense. I think they made some really good moves. They were another team, that I think made great moves, in the draft. You added Joey Bosa, as a situational guy, right? Who, listen, whatever you get from him, really, is going to be a positive, right? They're not asking him to go in there and be the number one guy. He's, but you line him up on the other side of Rousseau. You got Ed Oliver there. I mean, you got some dudes who can rush the passer, right? So
that defense is going to be crazy.
Yeah. And so again, a really good defense to go with a really good offensive line. They were able to run the ball with James Cook. You gave Shakir, you extended him. You got Keon Coleman year 2. You landed, I think, a guy who a lot of people like low key, really, really solid move was Josh Palmer from the Chargers. They brought him in at receiver.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Really, really good move. I'm telling you, that's going to be low key one of the better moves of the offseason when it's all said and done. 2 good tight ends. Again, the running back room is really good with, you got James Cook, you got Ray Davis.
Ray Davis.
You got a couple other guys that are good. So honestly, man, there's not many deficiencies on that team. I mean, you really have to look at that team, and I don't know how they're not the favorite, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
The Dolphins, again, like we talked about, if health is on their side, if Tua's healthy, right? Again, regular season, I don't think there's any reason to think that they can't finish, that they can't at least challenge the Bills, right? Now, whether they're going to win the division, whether, who knows? But I think if everybody is healthy, right, and Sea Devil's kind of making reference to that.
Let me answer this. This. Sea Devil, here's the answer to your question. They've got the X factor. They've got Josh Allen. Josh Allen doesn't have to throw the ball. He can run the ball.
He was their second leading rusher. He was their second leading rusher last year.
And he goes off script, and he can throw the ball from anywhere.
Yeah, he's me.
Are we going to talk every year, Dolphins? This is what I don't like about some, not Sea Devil specifically, but a lot of Dolphins are always trashing the Bills, are always trashing Josh Allen, and then he comes over there and he just beats the hell out of us. Every year. How can we say anything bad about this?
He goes off against Miami. Like, he loves playing Miami. He goes nuts when he plays Miami. And so
thanks for the comment, Sea Devil. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Sea Devil, listen, I don't what's that going to look like? I mean, listen, hope for the Dolphins' sake, hopefully, at least with a lot of sacks, a lot of pressures on Josh Allen and at least some mistakes.
Hopefully,
But when you're looking at that Bills O-line, you're looking at a top 3 or 4 O-line in the league, right? And so
there you go.
It's not going to be as easy as just, okay, what does the pass rush look like, right? I mean, you're going to have to defend something. You're going to have to, on the back end, you're going to have to defend Keon Coleman. You're going to have to defend Khalil Shakir. You're going to have to defend Josh Palmer. So, two really good tight ends and Knox and Kincaid.
Even when we were healthy with Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb and Sealer and Christian Wilkins, what are they to us?
Yeah. Yeah, Josh Allen always has his way with Miami. Always.
He does.
He always has. Like
I don't like to admit that, but it's the truth.
And he's what he's lost how many games in Miami? Like one in his career? I think Miami's beat him once, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
Twice,
one
maybe,
time.
like
Yeah,
we're not often.
1-11 or something. I think we are.
Yeah, I mean he's had his literally had his way with Miami since he came to the league. Again, if he's lost more than one game, and somebody in the chat, if they want to correct me on that one, but I want to say that Allen has only lost one game to the Dolphins. So listen, I hear you about the pass rush. Listen, I'm right there with you. Like if Chubb, Phillips, and Robinson, everything, Sealer, if everybody's there, then then they have a great chance. But defending that dude is a problem.
It's tough, man.
Defending that guy is a problem. I'm telling for my money, and whoever is out there in the chat, whether it's CW, whoever can disagree with me, for my money, that guy's the best quarterback in the league. I don't think it's Mahomes. I think Mahomes is going to be in the conversation for everybody, essentially. But to me, Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the league. I would literally take him right now over anybody. That's just me.
Well, most valuable player last year.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, and I get what Lamar is, and I get what Joe Burrow is, and the whole deal. But for my money and Mahomes and the whole deal, like, listen, I get it. But for my money, Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the league. Yeah, Miami almost beat them last season in Buffalo without the 3 pass rushers. No, I get it. Listen, and that's what you get with division games, right? I think division games, really can go either way. I don't think there's any surprise to most people, and you see that every year in every division, right? You see, teams that aren't great, that in the division that they go on the road and beat, the division leader, they kick a last second field goal and beat them, right? I think that's what you get with division opponents. But by and large and consistently since Josh Allen has come into the league, Josh Allen has pretty much owned the Dolphins since he came into the league. He doesn't lose to them.
And let's not forget we got backup safety and cornerback this year. You don't think Josh Allen's not going to feast on that?
Yeah,
and it's going to be up. Pressure or rush you're going to get on him.
Yeah, it's going to be up to that front seven it's going to be up to that front seven to disrupt them.
To stop the run and put pressure on him, they're going to have to stop him. And not only stop him, but then they got to stop James Cook and the 2 tight ends.
And I would say, Steve, to be honest with you, like even if you don't stop it, because it's hard to stop him, right? Again, when you're as talented as he is, behind the O-line that he's got, it's hard to stop him, but you have to affect him, right? You have to pressure him, right? While at the same time keeping him from leaving the pocket and running for 25, 30 yards, because he can do that. He was their second leading rusher, and a guy who you better like if he's in the open field and you're going to tackle that dude, you better bring it. You better bring it because you'll get run over. Because you'll get run over. Again, he ran for like 500 something yards last year. He's the second leading rusher, and he can do it. The guy doesn't slide. He doesn't slide. Like he will gladly take you on because that guy's like 6'5", like 250. So it's like he has no problem taking on a safety or a corner. And so
I like this comment, and he's correct. Miami has not had a pass rush like this in a very long time. Yes,
I don't disagree.
Pans out and works out. If it pans out and it works out, yes, I agree. And if our 2 edge rushers can stay healthy, and Kenneth Grant is what they say he is, and Chop Robinson makes improvements, yeah, probably. But as you said, presumably. Okay, we have no evidence of that yet until we have evidence of it. So that's why I'm very cautious when I make statements like that about we got the best pass rush or we got the best running game this year. We don't know until the season starts.
And
I'm just being a realist.
And I'm glad that CW threw that in at the end, presumably, because those are all assumptions at this point. Those are all assumptions, right? And listen, across. So let me also preface what I'm about to say by saying we're presuming with everything, right? Even if you've seen it last year,
yeah, for sure,
we're presuming that you're going to see it again this year. And if for example with health that you didn't see it last year, you're going to presume and hope that you will have the benefit of health this year, right? So presumably, yes, has not had a pass rush like this. So again, if they're healthy, they stand a better chance than they did last year, without a doubt. 100%. But the thing is with the Bills is you're bringing back, right, you're bringing back with improvements. You're bringing back that team, right? That team didn't lose anybody that was worth anything. They're literally bringing back. All they did was add to it. So you're taking the MVP who did what he did, last year, almost made, the damn Super Bowl, right? I mean, barely lost to Kansas City. You've seen him do it already, right? And now you're bringing back the benefit of continuity, of health, of more weapons on both sides of the ball, and when you're talking about Bills versus Dolphins, you're hoping that the Dolphins can win a game because, again, he's owned them since he came into the league. And so, presume 100%. That's what I mean. That's why I said I prefaced it by saying presumably, right? So presumably, that is.
I agree with that.
But again, when the thing about presumptions is, I'm inclined to err on the side of health, and that's what the Bills have had, right? With the Dolphins, you're hoping that those guys are going to be healthy. And Jalen Phillips has proven throughout his career that when he's healthy, he is a talent, and he is a guy who gets after the quarterback when he is healthy, right? Bradley Chubb has proven when he's healthy. Chop, Chop, and Chop. I don't think was
and
hurt
Bradley Chubb.
Yeah, and that's
no. Chop wasn't hurt at all.
Yeah, Chubb, but Chubb. That's what I mean. So Bradley Chubb, when he's healthy, yeah. But unfortunately, those guys are coming off major injuries, right? And so, again, I kind of tend to err on the side of guys who, or teams who bring back, all their guys and have presumably added, talented players to both sides of the ball, right? And again, we're doing a lot of presuming because we're presuming those guys are going to come in and contribute and do well and be healthy and all that. But again, right now, I would lean towards the Bills winning the division, and right now winning it fairly comfortably.
Yep, I agree. And we're kind of running short of time here, but that's okay. We're gonna do this real quick. The Jets and Patriots. I'll let you handle this. Let's go with the Patriots and Jets. You go, whoever you want to pick first.
So we'll go with the Jets. Just kind of, I mean, they finished third in the division last year, so we'll just kind of go with them. To me, what I wrote down for them, I think they're really interesting to me in terms of, what I think they're a talented team. I think, last year they were just a disaster. I think as much as I like having Robert, I love that Robert Saleh's back with the Niners. I just think that guy he was a little overwhelmed being the head coach of a team. I don't think he was ever ready to be the head coach of a team, and I think it showed.
Agreed.
Right? I think the team was a talented team, and just they could not get it together. Right. The Aaron Rodgers saga was a dramatic disaster. That team just didn't have any chemistry, didn't have any just anything, no winning intangibles there, right? They were talented. I think you have talent on both sides of the ball. I mean, you got Sauce Gardner is a top 3 corner in the league, right? I mean, you have talent at linebacker, you have talent at defensive line with Quinnen Williams. On offense, again, you have some guys, on the O-line. Garrett Wilson, who's really good. Breece Hall is a good running back. I think they made really good moves in the draft. They took Membu from Missouri, who I think is going to start day one at right tackle. You got Mason Taylor, obviously Jason Taylor's kid, who I think is going to contribute really early on at the tight end position. Azaria Thomas from Florida State, who's a third-round corner, who I think probably went later than most people thought he was. I saw first-round buzz on him. I think that was a great get in the third round. So I think they've really made some improvements to that team. I think Aaron Glenn is a guy who's I think going to bring some stability and just a unifying type of unifying type of personality and everything. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to get the most out of that team. So again, I think a team that if listen, the talent is there. They just have to. They brought in a first-time OC from Detroit. Aaron Glenn brought him with him. And so I'm interested to see kind of how that goes. Because again, we forget Justin Fields now is running that offense. So when you look at what they're more than likely going to be able to do is run the ball, right? Play action. You're throwing into Garrett Wilson and the guys they have. I think personally, it's an interesting team to see. I'm really interested to see what Fields is going to be in that offense, because you get a guy who was a passing game coordinator in Detroit under Ben Johnson, who's never been an OC. And now you're bringing him to a quarterback who's literally night and day from Jared Goff. Jared Goff was a statue. Justin Fields is the total opposite, right? Jared Goff in a passer. Justin Fields, not so much. So I'm really interested to see how that offense goes. But if they're healthy on the O-line and you look at what they're going to, hopefully be able to do running the ball, Justin Fields, Breece Hall, I think that could be a scary run offense if everything is working the way they want it to work. I think it's a really interesting team. I think it's a talented team, and I don't think they're going to be an easy out for anybody that plays them. So I think they're going to be challenging for sure.
Yeah,
now,
for sure.
Be second necessarily in that division. No,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. Would I be like 100% shocked if they did? I wouldn't say shocked. I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be totally shocked. I think they have enough offense to make it really interesting.
I agree with that.
Yeah, when you look at the Pats, for me, I think they had the best offseason of any team in that division. And again, you're talking about a division that every team, I think, had a really good offseason for the most part, right? But when you talk about the draft and so on and so forth, I think every team had a good offseason. But to me, the reason why I think the Pats had the best offseason is because I think they added a stud at head coach. I think a guy in Mike Vrabel, who I think got kind of the shit end of the stick in Tennessee. I don't know why they fired him, to be totally honest with you, because I think that guy's a really, really good coach. And I think you got to be excited. If you're them, I think you have to be excited for for a guy like Drake May, who ended the season, was looking like, he had figured some things out right now. Again, another thing that's intriguing to me, Josh McDaniels coming back as an OC. Really interesting to see how that goes. Thomas Brown is the passing game coordinator. Interesting to me to see how that'll affect Drake May, because now he's coming in, right, new system, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But again, man, you added Stephon Diggs. You added some impact guys on the O-line in the draft, and Jared Wilson, Will Campbell. I think those are two huge pickups on the offensive line. Young, I think they're going to be
forgot about Will Campbell.
Fourth pick in the draft. And that guy's going to be day one starter. Jared Wilson from Georgia, I think, is a guy who's going to play really early. They drafted Travion Henderson from Ohio State, who I think, him and Ramondre Stevenson, that's a hell of a backfield, to be honest with you. And if you know anything about Vrabel, is they're going to run the ball. That's what they're going to do. They're going to have Drake May.
Defense is going to be physical,
right? Top 5 probably corner and Christian Gonzalez, right? I mean, you added Milton Williams, a D tackle from Baltimore. So I mean, again, man, when you're looking at this team, this is one of those teams. Am I predicting them finishing second? I'm not, but I think it's going to be. I think this division is going to be tough. I don't think anybody. I don't think those teams are all just going to they're all going to have. You're going to have to go to the third tiebreaker. When you talk about this division, when you talk about aside from the Bills, the Dolphins, Pats, and Jets, I think these are teams that they're just going to split everything, right? There's not going to be one team that's going to finish. You play, your 6 division games. I think all those teams are going to be very similar records. They're all going to be kind of in that 3-3 range in the division.
Yeah, so I agree. It's going to be close, man.
It's going to be a really hard fought. Yeah, I think it's going to be a hard fought division for sure. I think there's some talent. I think those teams, especially come Cole and I haven't looked at the Dolphins schedule all the way.
They play New England the last game of the season, and they play them the second game and the last game of the season.
So yeah, I think they play. They're at Buffalo.
The last game of the season for New England is in New England.
Yeah,
it's going to be cold, and they play Buffalo. Yeah, they play Buffalo like the third game of the season.
Week 2 or week 3?
Week 2, week 3 at home.
One of those.
And then they got to travel up to Buffalo. I forgot I had the schedule right.
Yeah, I'd have to look at the schedule. I thought for some reason the Dolphins, and again, I don't know if anybody in the chat knows of or can bring up the schedule, but I thought the Dolphins went to Buffalo early on in the season. No, week 2, week 3, maybe?
No.
Or am I wrong on that?
Let's see. No, you're right on that. Yeah. They no. They go to Buffalo in the third week of the season.
So that's good. And then that's good.
That's good. And they play Buffalo at home around the let me see here real quick.
Yeah, I think it's like week 10, week 9, week 10, something like that. I think is what I saw. They're done with Buffalo early-ish in the season.
Yeah, week 10.
Week 10. So there you go. Yeah, I could have sworn that's what I heard. And then
week 10.
Obviously, New England last game of the season, you know what you're going to get there. you better
Yeah.
buckle your chin strap and bring a couple extra layers, because you know that shit's going to be cold as hell.
Yep. For
You know,
sure.
but again, man,
Especially that
listen,
time of year.
exactly. This is what the knock on them has been, right? For the better part of the last few years. I mean, with given Tua as a quarterback and McDaniel as head coach and everything, they're a team that will light you up in the regular season, but when it gets below, like 50, they can't win. And
And in
so
December and January.
in December, right? And so that's the thing,
Or
man. Is like
December anyway. Yeah.
that's and again, that's what we talked about, right? Very top of the show. Run the ball and play defense. Why? Because that
That's when you
travels.
got to. Yep,
That
exactly.
travels.
Defense travels.
Run the
Defense
ball
travels.
and
And so
run
does
the
the run
ball
game. Yep.
and play defense, because those two things travel. We know that finesse teams in the freezing cold weather, right? They showed it when they went to Kansas City, a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what happens, right? If you are not, and listen, it's not necessarily having to be, 52-48 run. That's not necessarily what you're talking about, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be. It doesn't have to be, even, but you have to be able to run the ball. You have to,
for sure.
right? For several reasons.
Yeah, you have to be able to run the ball, especially at that time of year, right? Even if you didn't run the ball, you ran the ball, adequately during the year. When it comes December, January playoffs, you've got to be, especially in the cold. And Miami's going to play in the cold if they go to the playoffs, if they're not the first seed, right?
And
so
that's the thing. If
they've
you're going to win the division, you're going to be on the road.
You're going to be on the road. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to play and freeze your ass off. Bottom line. All right, so Q, where can people find you, brother, and all that good stuff?
You can find me just like you see on the screen right there. The name of my channel is the I Hate Football Podcast. You can find me on YouTube under that name. You can find me on Instagram under the same name. Changes a little bit for Twitter, X, however, whichever one you use. It's Hate Football Pod, but you can also search I Hate Football Podcast and you'll find me on there. Anybody who wants to touch base, get together, collaborate. You guys want to get together, on a pod, whichever one of those, man, hit me up, send me a message. Let's chat. I love to hear from everybody. So yeah, if you can, like the channel and subscribe, I would definitely be grateful, trying to get this thing rolling, get it off the ground. Definitely enjoyed the chat. My guy C Devil right there.
Thank you, C Devil.
He's definitely contributed a bunch today. I know M Rack also, has
did.
Will also. I saw him on there. And again, man, love getting together with you guys on FTSM, man. Definitely appreciate the hospitality and appreciate you guys, letting me hang out for a little bit with you guys. And definitely open to getting together with you. And everybody else over there, everybody with Bobby and everybody else, man. I had a good time with the East Century boys, not too long ago.
Yeah.
We had some good conversation. And so,
I saw that.
Yeah, man, you guys definitely put out some good content, man. I'd love to get with you guys more and more as the time goes on, man.
Hey, anytime, brother. You're welcome here anytime. And I appreciate you coming on tonight. I really did. I enjoyed this conversation, shared a lot of good knowledge and everything. And make sure everybody in the chat, first of all, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, if you're on other platforms, come over here, to the YouTube channel, hit that like button, share with your friends, your families, and your neighbors once you subscribe. And now I remembered what I wanted to say. We have super chats. We have super chats on here. If anybody wanted to donate to the channel, that would be appreciated. So next time, just remember, we do have super chats. I don't like mentioning it a lot because, I just don't. It just feels funny, asking folks for super chats. But anyway, we do have that if you're so inclined to donate. So appreciate everybody in the chat. C Devil, M Rap, Will, Cap for Life. I know I'm going to forget. Raphael's been in here and a bunch of other folks that come and join the chat. I really appreciate it. I couldn't do this show without you. I love you guys.
Frozen Fin fan also. He was.
Yeah,
he was
Frozen
here,
Fin fan. Yes, sir. Frozen Fin fan.
And Sammy.
Finn Sammy.
Yep.
Guys. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, man.
And so again, everybody have a great evening. God bless. And remember, Dolphins #1, baby. Dolphins #1.